Hi, I'm Heidi Herriott, the host of the Animal Tales podcast, and this is our new podcast, the new series, Doggone Good Information. And I'd like to welcome my co-host, Tommy Fahey.
Good morning, Heidi.
Hi, Tommy. How are you?
Wonderful. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm really enjoying these and going to start really boosting them out there more so more people can enjoy the information. The ones I've gotten some feedback and people are enjoying the information, and I think we're providing a little different information in a different way than the other places out there, you know?
Yeah, I agree. It's kind of a non-emotional, scientific facts.
Imagine.
I know, shocking that we might discuss that.
Not that we don't have a little
lot of our
emotion.
Topics are just best practices.
Yeah. If anything, I worry sometimes maybe come off across as a little stalwart or like, oh, that's just silly. And I really don't mean to do that. We've just gone so far over the top with emotion and lost our best practices in actual animal husbandry, which is what you and I are really committed to talking about. So I apologize if that seems the case at times. Far be it from me.
Happen.
It does. So a couple things this week that happened that are interesting. Another, what they're calling, at least in one case, they're calling a parvovirus outbreak. Northern Michigan, even the state vet got involved and was putting out updates. And New York City had a mysterious illness, parvo-like. Again, this is in prior podcasts, so go back and listen to our other, this is, I believe, number 7, so one of the earlier podcasts. Mm-hmm. We talk about this, and a lot of reasons for this, but it's airborne stuff, so if your dogs are close together in a dog park, but also drinking out of water bowls. I mentioned this I was at the hair salon yesterday getting my hair done. And
looks fabulous.
Thank you. And I mentioned this, and I was surprised that the 3 or 4 people in there all went, oh. It still surprises people when you say, you do realize that when your dog drinks out of the water bowl at the farmer's market or wherever there's a community water bowl, it's saliva. And so really interesting. I want to keep driving that point home. I think that's very interesting.
Yeah, it's quite funny that you or I wouldn't probably go around and share a drink with a stranger.
No.
We wouldn't pick up a stranger.
Especially after COVID.
And take a sip. Yeah.
Yeah.
We all kind of are a little backed off of that kind of stuff now, especially, but we don't really think about it with our pets. And we sort of ignore it.
Play dates and
it's really important.
Dog parks and that. So yeah, that's important. And then the other thing, well, I'll save that actually for a pet peeve. I'll save that for the
okay.
Another thing that really annoyed me. So, how about you? Anything to update us on?
All of my stories from this week go into our main topic.
Oh, great. So, okay. Yeah, that's right. You've been busy. So
it's been a busy couple of weeks.
Yeah, Tommy's getting ready to travel, and we have so many topics we want to take on, but one of them coming up is planning for a vacation or traveling and do's and don'ts of taking your pet, the pros and cons. So we want to help our listeners delve into that. And I did this on iHeartRadio. I did about a 5-minute call in on various markets talking about vacationing with your pet, and got a lot of feedback because it's a hot topic for sure. And I think I think what happens, a family dynamic, let's say, or even couples. Maybe one person is just married to their pet is their baby, that whole thing, and they decide they got to go everywhere with them. So now you have a significant other or spouse and or family. You've made that decision for your whole group because the pet can only go so many places and do so many things. So that's kind of the starting point for me is, and I live in vacation paradise. I'm outside of St. Petersburg, Florida. We're kind of waiting for the snowbirds to go home, frankly, but we're happy that we have such a beautiful place they enjoy. The weather's idyllic, and right now I'm looking out the window. It's gorgeous. But we do not allow dogs on our beaches. I specifically live near Indian Rocks Beach, and then above us is Clearwater, below us St. Pete. Dogs are not allowed on the beaches. I'm always amazed with the internet. That surprises people because you could Google that, right?
Yep.
So here comes a family with they've spent the money. They're coming down. The weather's beautiful. Everything's great. And they have Fluffy with them, Fido.
Mm-hmm.
And now they come to the beach. And I've actually been walking on the beach and seen him look at the sun and go, oh, no. So now you want to spend hours all day on the beach, coming and going, go get lunch somewhere, come back, whatever. You can't take the dog. You can't leave him in the car. It's above 80 degrees. That terrifies me, even in cold weather, that somebody's going to break my window and take my dog out. But at over 80 degrees, it's really not acceptable, and it's humid here. So now the dog's at the hotel or Airbnb or wherever. A lot of dogs have separation anxiety now. Hopefully you brought your cage so he doesn't destroy the place, your kennel, your crate. It's a dog, looks like a dog, talks like
Same
a dog.
thing.
I call it a cage, but whatever, the kennel. Are they barking then because they're in the kennel? And now you got to go every few hours and take care of them. So that's where my head goes when we start this conversation. And, but I didn't want to leave him at home. We're anthropomorphizing a bit because does a dog not want to stay home alone or go to the boarding place or go to a friend's house, or is it you? So I'll let you pick it up from there. Because you're traveling soon, right?
Yeah, I have several trips coming up. And I travel quite frequently with my job. I train a lot of horses and we go to shows. And so I'm gone for, sometimes just 2 or 3 days over the weekend, or I go out and teach a clinic. So I'm gone. Usually it's just 2 or 3 days at a time. But I've got a big trip coming up at the end of May. I'm going with my family to Ireland then over to London.
Take me.
So we're gone a full 10 days.
Is this with Mama Fahey?
Yes.
She takes you guys on the best trips. Awesome. Okay.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Back to your few days trips. Are those hotels or do you have a horse trailer you stay in or what's the scenario?
So it depends. They're all a little different. Sometimes we stay in a hotel. Sometimes we get an Airbnb. It just kind of depends on the scenario.
Okay.
I've done a bit of all of it.
And does Jimmy
I don't
Dean
have a living quarters trailer?
Does Jimmy Dean come along, or it depends?
So it depends.
Jimmy Dean, the Jack Russell,
here.
the Jack Russell Terrier.
Yes.
Just for clarification, he makes every episode.
Yes, the star of the show. So in deciding whether or not to take your pet with you, you have to decide, what are you going to be doing? Where are you going to be going? And is it really appropriate for you to have the dog or cat or whatever pet with you? And sometimes it is, and you can make it work. And sometimes it really isn't.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of factors that go into that decision. But for example, last year I went to a horse show. I was taking a client to a horse show. So I was not riding. I was just there to coach. And the showgrounds that we were going to was dog friendly. In the show bill, it says, well-behaved dogs are welcome as long as they're on a leash. And we show in the dressage world. So it's a very quiet, low energy type environment, almost like golf. You have the golf clap, not a lot of loud noises, things like that. Yeah. So I was sitting with Jimmy Dean watching the show go on, and another dog came up, and the person they were very friendly. It was fine. It was handled appropriately, but Jimmy Dean barked at the other dog. And I said, okay, that's it. You can't sit here and bark at the other dog. They weren't nose to nose. He was just saw him from across and thought, oh, he's coming into my space.
Yeah.
And he wanted to play. It wasn't aggressive or anything like that. But not appropriate for that environment. And so I excused myself, took the dog outside so I didn't bother anybody going on. And then I don't take him back to that showgrounds.
Yeah.
Because it's not, I realize that we're not in a place that I'm far enough away from the action of what's going on that I'm encroaching on other people's environment and space. They've paid a lot of money to show, to bring their horse and show there, and they want a quiet environment. They don't want a dog barking in the background.
So could you not put him in a kennel in one of the trailers, or would he bark or be vocal?
Yeah, so I thought he would be more stressed out being in a trailer, and then it was starting to get warmer outside.
Right, so you got that, yeah.
So
do you have
yeah,
electricity? Can you put a fan on? And
exactly.
yeah,
And so those were all kind of contributing factors to say, maybe it's not the best environment for me to bring him along.
so where does he
so
stay then? What's the option?
Yeah, I'm lucky. I have options, and that's a big takeaway from today.
Yeah.
Is if you're not gonna if you're not able to bring your dog along with you, or it's not appropriate to bring your dog along with you, you need options of where your dog can stay. So I am lucky that I worked for a vet clinic that has a boarding facility attached to it. So for the first 3 years of his life, he went to doggy daycare. As I went to work, he went to doggy daycare in the boarding facility. So he's very comfortable in that environment. Yeah. He got really comfortable being in that place. I also happen to have some good friends that have a dog that's a similar size and a similar age, and they get along really well. So when they're available, he goes and stays at their house.
Perfect.
And then vice versa, if they need me to keep their dog, I'm able to do that. So we have some options there. And then there's a couple other boarding facilities in the area that I'm aware of, that I have talked to, that I know I could use if perhaps the clinic that I used to work at was fully booked, or if my friends weren't available to take care of them. There's options.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. So I think that's a big takeaway, is make sure you have options, and don't just rely on one thing.
Yeah. I swear, I was thinking about it this morning because I knew we were going to talk about this, and I think about it often because I care for, I do some dog training, and for my clients, I will do boarding, right? If they got to catch me, I like to travel, so they get a little annoyed with me. Like, aren't you going to be home, Heidi? It's like, not if I can help it, but I'll take them with me. They don't always go for that. I do have one lady who let me take the dog with me in the RV, so that was cool. But,
sure.
And I said, this is a great experience, and, I'll be responsible. I've got a good track record over my years. But, the one, to have options, so you got to have your vet work done, right? So if you're a person who's not responsible with that, you can't board them. And you actually have to do the kennel cough one, which is that Bordetella?
Bordetella, yeah.
Which I don't always do when I was younger because my dogs were never boarded. We were always virtually quarantined. But now I do it because I just don't know what's going to come up. But I do think there should be like a Craigslist for dog sharing. And
that'd be an interesting idea.
I've told you that before. I have a cute little dog. People love to be around Trooper, right? And so I'd be happy to share him, because then I'd have a little freedom at times that I didn't expect or whatever. We have a great situation at home. We have a dog door, fenced yard. So if I'm gone for more than 5 hours, he can run himself. And I come home and he's out in the backyard and he comes popping through the dog door. Hey, how you doing?
Hey, welcome home.
He's laying on the patio furniture out there sunning himself. It's a riot. And now I have a big dog, so life's changed a little bit. But, as you're out or and about or friends of that, introduce them to your dog. If somebody has kids and they don't have a dog and they would enjoy watching a dog for periods of time. So I just think that's one good option that maybe people haven't explored as much. A senior who's lonesome but doesn't want, can't, the expense. My goodness, the expense of a dog.
It adds up very quickly.
Yeah. So, think about your options, get a little creative. Even on Nextdoor, I have a cute dog. I travel a lot. Would somebody like to kind of partner with me or watch my dog? There's Rover, of course, where someone will come and watch your dog at your house.
Yes.
That's not my favorite option. It's one thing if they stay overnight, but I've actually seen it where they just go run them while the people are gone.
Yeah, they come a couple times a day.
That's a real solitary thing for a dog. It's just not my favorite. I don't think it's heinous, but I think it'd be better if they were at somebody's house or even at a boarding facility where there's interaction of some sort, opinion.
I think it depends on the dog.
Yeah, well, that's true. And
it depends on what they're used to.
Yeah, that's true. If you're gone, I don't go to work all day, so you're right. I don't think of it in those terms. So thank you for reminding me. Yeah.
Yeah. So it would actually work quite well, I think, for Jimmy Dean.
Okay.
Because through the summer, I don't take him with me when I'm going out to work. Because I go and do a lot of horse training, so I'm on the farm.
Yeah.
So if it's above about 70 degrees, I don't take him with me because he has to stay in the truck.
Yeah.
And I don't want him to overheat and that kind of thing. Or if it's super cold, I don't want him to be cold in the truck. So
no doubt he has a cute little coat, though.
Oh, well, yes, of course. Yeah, so he stays home fairly often and is quite comfortable and pretty relaxed.
Okay.
And I alternate between leaving him in a kennel or just leaving him free in the house.
Right.
Depending on what the schedule is like. And then also, as we've talked about in the past, just getting him used to the idea of having to be in a kennel.
Yeah. Do it regularly.
A little reminder.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, it would actually probably work quite well for him to have somebody come in a couple times a day and feed him, take him for a walk, throw the ball for him in the backyard, and then he goes back to bed.
Okay.
So I don't think he would.
And he's in familiar. There is something to be said for familiar surroundings.
Yes.
So I do fully understand that. And sometimes people have more than one dog.
Correct.
And so if you have two dogs, I think it's probably a viable option because they're keeping each other company. But
exactly,
are they being ill-mannered when you're gone? Like trying to let you know they're not happy. Yeah.
Yeah. I am lucky, knock on wood. Jimmy Dean is very well behaved, has really never torn anything up. And I shouldn't say that out loud because then something's going to happen. But he rarely has an accident in the house. He rarely gets into anything that he shouldn't.
Right.
So I'm very lucky in that respect. Some dogs get into everything.
Yeah.
So then that's not really a viable option.
Yeah, because they're going to let you know too if you're gone. They may be a little unhappy, so they're going to even do a little bit more. Yeah. So that's another consideration. So you've got boarding facilities, you've got friends, you've got Rover, which are some trusted person that your dog stays with. Or I see around St. Pete, we're such a dense area. So there's people will post on this dog forums, Facebook or Nextdoor, the two I pretty much use. Going to be away. My regular dog sitter's not available. And they'll post, Marianne does it in her home. She's got a fenced yard. She'll take only 3 clients at a time. So there's that kind of thing, a kind of in between friends and an actual boarding, like the vet boarding facility type thing. So you can find those as well where they won't put them in a kennel or they have a big backyard or that kind of thing. So, everybody's got their preferences. But I want to talk about having more than one pet. It seems to be, one, I think, again, on this podcast, we talk a lot about being guilted into things or society's messaging saying, 1, you should get a dog, 2, you should get a dog from shelter, and that dog needs a buddy, right?
Your dog needs a dog.
Yeah, boy, when you, essentially that's it, isn't it? I never thought about it that way. It didn't used to be that way. We got a dog for the family, and the family, that was the family dynamic. I just got this big dog, and I've talked about it many times, Otis. He's a standard poodle. He's 68 pounds or so, so he's a big boy. It's so expensive. And that to add to that, groceries have gone up and gas is ridiculous. I'm really surprised. I shouldn't say I'm surprised, but he came with some issues, so I had to address those. I would have done it differently if I had really thought about it. I would have let him be a foster for a lot longer, but I'm honest, and so
hindsight's 20/20.
Yeah, but nonetheless, I don't understand why people get. I'm doing it for, I want to train Otis. I want to put everything on him I've got. I want to test myself, essentially. And also, I'm an AKC Canine Good Citizen Evaluator. So I want to put him through the program and really see what I got. And he's very timid and came from a hoarding situation. So he's a great dog for that. And I know I could change his life. And somebody else might just let him stay timid. That's another podcast we've talked about, training. Bad idea. Change their narrative right away. Don't let them feed on the past. So But now I got to figure him out too when in the equation. I had a white 6-pounder who everybody loved. I'll take Trooper, you know. And Trooper's very independent anyhow. Now I got the big dog. He's wonderful. He's not mean, none of that. But the cost goes up for boarding. And now I've got to consider 2 dogs. And if I take him, it's a much bigger impact than my 6-pound little, you know, airline carry case that I bring along with Trooper. So, you know, I know people that have a couple big dogs, and now they're getting the bully breeds too. There are places that won't take them. Yeah. So there's so many considerations on that, and I guess that just trying to encourage you to think beyond your daily situation. Have some vision. Do you want to go to weddings? Some friends are having weddings. Are you going on vacation a lot? Do you have little kids? So we've talked about the cost. Again, check out our other podcasts. But just going on vacation, if you have to board them, get somebody to watch them. And surely bringing 2 dogs on vacation is even much more impactful than bringing one or traveling.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I think with the vacation idea, I think what occurs to me is it a vacation for the dog?
Right.
Or is it stressful for the dog?
Yeah. I think that's a huge consideration because you're paying a lot of money to go on vacation, or you're paying something anyhow.
Yeah.
And it's really changing the dynamic of your vacation if you bring your pet.
Correct.
It really is.
And then it's the dilemma idea, right? Is it more stressful for them to travel with you, or is it more stressful for them to be boarded somewhere, or to be have somebody come into the home and take care of them, or whatever arrangement you're going to make? Which one is better or worse, or is there a better or worse?
If you're in that space where you're really stressed about that, I would say you could use some assistance in your training program, because you really shouldn't be that stressed about that. I don't stress if I leave my dogs home because I've trained them and I want to do this, because if I don't come home one day, I want to know they're okay. So if I leave them and I'm overly concerned that they're not going to be okay, I need to work on that.
Correct.
You know, I don't, and the other aspect of that worry I know is trusting people, but do your homework, do the best scenario you can, you know, make sure you've covered your bases, and then check on the dog. That's fine. But if you're getting pictures every few hours and stuff, frankly, you're a bit over the top. Yeah. I think I agree. Maybe I'm wrong, but
well, and it's causing you stress,
and it's not more importantly, it's not healthy for your animal.
Right.
If you're the kind of person who, you know, is away and you're worried about your animal the whole time you're away, you're really over worrying on that. So do a better job with your training program. Test your training program. The best way you could test it, my father, when we were growing up, is to have somebody else actually run through the routines with our animals to see if we've done our job. So if I train a dog and I can't hand it off to you and say, Tommy, tell it to do X, Y, and Z, the basics from, you know, behave at your food and go potty outside to roll over and sit up and, you know, get off the couch, whatever it is, it has to mind everybody.
Yeah.
I use the analogy, if you take your child goes to school, kindergarten, do they say to the teacher, I don't have to listen to you, I only have to listen to my mommy. It's really, you've really told your dog that.
Yes.
And so it all ties into this. I guess the reason we're doing this is April when this is airing. Of course, with the technology world, you can watch this 5 years from now. But we're thinking about it because, one, if you use a boarding facility, you got to get booked. Yes. They book up in the summer. So we wanted to give you a heads up on that. You've got to make sure you have all your shots to use a boarding facility. So, and they want to see the paperwork, because I don't always get my shots done at my vet. Sometimes I use the mobile clinics. So I need to have that paperwork available. So make sure you have that. And again, you need the basics, but you also need Bordetella. Am I missing anything there?
So every facility is probably going to have their own, rules and regulations. The clinic that I worked for, the vet clinic that had the boarding facility, we required your all your standard vaccines, which is your DHLPP, So distemper, parvo, hepatitis, leptospirosis, all the big words, a rabies vaccine.
Yeah, rabies for sure.
And depending on the species and depending on the brand of rabies, it can be a 1 or a 3 year. So you want to be careful about how that's labeled. So be sure that you're confirming which rabies vaccine you had.
Yeah.
We also required a annual parasite screening. So
Good.
a fecal parasite screening.
Yeah.
We also required an internal parasite screening, meaning heartworm test.
Oh, okay.
So all the dogs had to have an annual heartworm test because we wanted to make sure they were heartworm negative. And then you have, so those are your standard things. And then you have the risk-based vaccines, which is we required a Bordetella vaccination, and that was every 6 months.
Oh, interesting.
Some places is every year. We required it every 6 months because there was there's a greater likelihood of it being around here in this area. We have a lot of kennel cough issues.
And you're in Springfield, Missouri.
Yeah. So the people making the decisions on those regulations were aware that there's a high propensity for kennel cough in the area, so we required it every 6 months. So depending on which facility you go to, they're going to have different regulations. And I said this on a podcast before: if they don't ask you for your records,
they're not asking other people
else either. Yeah. So a lot of times. Well, I shouldn't say a lot. There were a few times where we had clients come in that were new to our boarding facility that didn't understand the regulations that we had in place and were really upset that their dog had to have a heartworm test or their dog had to have that Bordetella within 6 months or whatever it was. And we were always very clear on the phone when you're booking, what those things are. But there were a few people that took issue with it. They said, oh, my dog doesn't need this, or, oh, my vet says I don't need that. Or, oh, can't you just trust me that this happened? Yeah. No, I cannot.
Right, because I won't do it with other people either. I'm protecting your dog.
Exactly. I'm protecting your dog and I'm protecting all of these other dogs that we have in our facility. So when somebody asks you for those things, be happy they asked for them. Be happy to produce them, because that means that they are really doing their due diligence and they are doing things with best practices.
Yeah. Best practices. Hashtag best practices.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, like I said, it's going to depend on the facility, what they require. It's going to depend on what area of the country you're in, what region. Usually the farther south you go, the hotter it is, the more problems you're going to have with flying insects and that kind of things. So the recommendations on vaccinations become a little different. So the farther south you go, sometimes they do biannual rather than annual, things like that. So it's going to be different depending on the region.
So it's interesting, there are a lot of people who don't want to board their dogs. They don't want them in a kennel and all that kind of stuff. I think money is the factor for me that I wouldn't board a dog. I do board dogs, but if I have a choice, it's more financial. I'll be honest with you. Because I'd actually prefer the boarding facility at some level, because I feel pretty confident. A lot of times they even have cameras, or they let you know the schedule. I don't really go along with the camera thing, and I wouldn't log into it. I just not unless I suspected something. But chances are, if I really suspected something and was going to sue them over it, I could probably get footage. But I like the fact that they're at a place where they could get help if they need it. There's protocols in place, and the likelihood of them getting away or that type of thing. Now a lot of them do it like doggy daycare, where they'll put them out during the day together, which I wince at a little bit. Frankly, I still don't know how that works, how people do that successfully, but they do. I would do that. I would do that over a private person, frankly.
Yeah.
And so that, I think, but there are so many people like, I don't want my dog in a cage, or I don't want, again, I'm testing my training program and my ability for my pet to be well behaved and feel okay. If I take them there and say, you're fine, this is going to be fine, no problems. I have enough savvy to know if something untoward happened, if the dog started acting a lot differently. And I think a lot of people do. You don't have to be a trainer to recognize that, maybe they got picked or put in the cage hastily or something and they're a little, it's fine. Talk to the folks about that or maybe use a different place. But your dog, you can make it a negative experience by how you approach it. If you go there and you're like, I'm so sorry, Fluffy, you have to go to this place, but we can't take you.
It's all how you walk in the front door.
Yes, if you walk in and say, "Hey, you're going to sleepaway camp," just have a different approach to it. The other thing, I did take Otis with me. I was gone doing a circus for a couple weekends. I was the ringmaster, and Otis, the big dog, came with me because my husband, he's fine with me having dogs, but I didn't not want to leave him with the care of Otis. Otis is timid, and I'm trying to stay really into him right now and work with him. So I brought him along, and it was a situation. I brought his little dog run in a kennel, and he could stay just by the dressing room with me. I brought fans. It was a pain in the butt, frankly, especially if the option is I'm just free and easy and don't have to worry about it because it was Florida and it was warm. But it worked out fine, and he's very timid and quiet, so he doesn't bark in the hotel or anything. But here's a consideration, too, when you take him. It was Florida, sandy areas outside a hotel, and the back of the hotel had a big open space, but it was kind of crummy. People had dropped stuff in that. But it was the best place to run the dog. Mm-hmm. He's a big dog. I was thinking about fleas the whole time.
Yes.
So now I've taken my dog out of my yard and my area and all of that. So now I'm thinking about, you could tell people had run their dogs and not picked it up, just all that kind of stuff. So that, and also you can get sand spurs. If you're on vacation, yes, you might stop along the white dog parks, but you might stop at a rest area and run your dog and end up with sand spurs in their fur. So all those little, they might seem minor, but to me they're kind of a big deal because I do not want to bring fleas in to the equation. Yes. They're very hard to get rid of. So I was thinking about that.
Yeah, so we've kind of shifted into the idea of when you do take your pet with you, let's say you're going on a road trip, and this is something that I experience a lot, taking Jimmy, when I do take him with me to horse shows or to clinics or whatever I'm doing, along the same lines of stopping at a rest stop or a gas station or... it's really common now that they have these fenced in areas. They have these little dog parks set up. I know there's a Love station here nearby that has one, like a little, half acre little area. And what I think about is there's nobody checking records when the dog is let in there.
Right.
You have no idea what dog was in there 30 minutes before, 24 hours before. You don't know who's been in there.
And back to these parvo outbreaks and canine flus and stuff that are going on.
Yeah. So I actually make a point when I do take my dog with me and I do have to stop along the way. I try to find something totally off the beaten path. Or if I'm at a rest stop, I go way away from all of the heavy traffic.
Yeah.
I go, far away to the back. And if there's marked pet areas and they're very clear, then you got to follow the rules. But I avoid them if I can.
Yeah, I agree.
So that I don't pick up some parasites. I don't pick up, some kind of disease, and or fleas, the external parasites, because it's hard to get rid of. It's a pain in the butt to have to deal with. And by just kind of avoiding those high traffic areas, you can kind of get around it.
Yeah. And it may sound like
your risk.
It may sound like we're being a bit of alarmist about disease or parasites, but Google it, look it up. I mean, there've been so many outbreaks of these. They call it canine-like flu, and now this parvovirus and that. Mm-hmm. And so we're not making this stuff up. It's really happening, and I think it should be a big concern because people who aren't aware of it are the ones who are potentially spreading it, right? Because they're not not thinking about it in that way. So best practices, we should, as Tommy and I, as animal people, we just think of this naturally. I don't let my horse out and eat grass anywhere that I stop either, because I don't know if they've treated it or that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
it has to
what
be
kind of chemicals are there.
first and forefront on our minds. My father always used to have the attitude, but again, my father's been gone, a dozen years, and so he was younger. It was a little different world when he was out with animals, but that animals generally won't go towards things that are harmful to them if they're not complete, like in a pasture, bad for horses, like bad weeds or that. So dogs too, supposedly they won't go after stuff that's bad for them if they're well kept. I don't espouse that theory. I just assume they're going to cause me headaches and go after all the things they shouldn't. So with Otis, trying to stop, exactly right, trying to stop along the way and run him was challenging because he doesn't go well on a leash right now. I'm putting a cue on the poo. We're working on that. And I wanted to stop at Cracker Barrel. I love to have breakfast. It was too warm. I couldn't leave him in the car. And I'm not going to bring him in. And I wasn't looking for patio places because I'm not big on that. But it really changed the whole dynamic of my trip.
Yeah.
So I want, I think we're trying to get people to consider this. And again, I live by the beach and you can't take them on the beach. And then you have the restaurants that have patios, but they're packed with people with dogs too. But everything you do has to include your dog. What if you want to go to we have an aquarium here, or if you want to go to the zoo, and don't do the fake service dog thing. Do not do that. Do not.
Yeah. Oh, it's terrible.
Do not get them an ESA jacket and take them in places where it says service dogs only. Just unacceptable.
Yeah. Working in entertainment as we both have, I don't know if you ever experienced this, but a couple of times I can remember somebody brought in a dog saying it was a service dog. And we're in the middle of a show with live horses and theatrical effects and, strobe lighting and fog. And, the horses are acclimated to it. The dog starts freaking out over the horses running around and wants to chase the horses. Well, now that's put the entire cast in danger. And now has disrupted the entire experience for
the audience,
the entire audience. So now you've ruined an experience because you faked your way into an environment you should have never been in the first place.
And by the way, your pet is totally stressed out.
Yeah. And that was my point earlier, is when you take your dog on vacation or you travel with your pet, is that a vacation for your dog?
Yeah.
Or have you put that dog in a high stress environment?
Right.
And then on the same level, like what you're talking about with having to search out a patio to sit on so that you can have your dog with you and not leave it in the car, or dog friendly spaces. Well, now you've put a certain level of stress on yourself
and your family, the other people on vacation with you.
Yeah. You've restricted your options completely.
Yeah.
And then for people like you or I, we're then sitting there scanning the environment. We're not worried about our dog.
Exactly.
We're worried about everybody else.
Exactly.
That maybe doesn't have a well-trained dog. That's going to let their dog come running up to our table or come running up to our dog and try to meet and greet,
visit,
but ends up being a fight.
Yeah.
So, I think that's a big consideration when you're choosing how to travel, if you should travel or if you should leave the dog home or at a boarding facility, is it really going to save you any amount of stress if you are stressed about boarding the dog? But taking the dog with you maybe is not going to save you any stress.
And by the way, it might not save you money either, because the hotel had a pet fee.
Yeah.
And Airbnbs have a pet fee,
exactly.
A lot of Airbnbs. So you're paying, adding an additional cost. But again, this too goes back to when you decide to get a dog, to really make sure you want a dog. We talked about all the costs and that, again, another podcast that we've already done. But you decide you want a dog. Have the vision to think about what you're going to do in the year, 5 years, 10 years, and then getting the second dog, and then the breed you get, right? Because there are, sadly, whether you agree with it or not, there are breed private businesses can have breed specific things.
Absolutely.
And, they're not statewide yet, but they can do that. So, and it's intimidating to other people too. And then make sure your pet is really well trained, because whether you leave it home or take it with you, it's going to make your life a lot easier. I can't seem to impart that on people. And I don't know if it's because they don't know how to train or want to spend the money to get to that place, or they just don't feel like Fluffy needs it, that Fluffy's happy because she gets cookies and love all the time, even though she's spoiled rotten, right? It makes your life a lot harder. So the training is, again, one of the reasons you want a well-behaved animal, so that whether you take it or not, the person at home with it is having a good experience.
Yeah, exactly. And that was actually one of the stories I was going to tell today about to travel or not to travel, or having your well-trained dog. Is I have some friends that have a standard poodle. So he's probably similar size to Otis.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a little older. He's probably 8 to 10, something like that. And they're getting ready to take a very big trip, like a 2 to 3 week trip overseas.
Oh, wow.
And the dog is fairly well trained, well handled for them. So it's a couple, and for the owners, the dog behaves. But the times that I've gone to visit them, been in their house, or seen other people interact with them, the dog really ignores other people.
Oh, okay.
And then isn't really well socialized with other dogs.
Right.
So they kind of have one option. They have a good friend that has a dog of the same age that they've kind of swapped pet sitting back and forth with.
Oh, good. Yeah.
So that works out for them, but they're limited because that's only one option.
Yeah.
And they were telling me the story of they had boarded the dog, and it was a place that had cameras, and they kept logging in, watching the dog. Oh. And they were so worried because the dog wasn't interacting with the other dogs. Well, they only left the dog there for a day, first of all. So yeah, the first day was a little stressful, new environment, new place. And then the dog is not really well handled for other people. It's not a universal training method. Yeah. So, he didn't have a great experience, but had they stuck with it, stayed maybe in that program, gone a couple of times, let the dog get used to the environment, let the dog be handled by other people, that would have opened up a world of opportunity for them to be able to board that dog and have more options for them. So that's something to consider. And kind of to our point of all of this is you need options to be able to plan ahead. And not, so what's the adage, failure to plan is plan to fail.
Yeah. And, I've mentioned vacations. You've talked about traveling for work, but there's also the emergencies where you're called away to help a parent or a friend and you can't bring your pet. So whatever that situation is, think about it in advance. Again, it's not summer yet if you're listening to this podcast when it comes out. But make sure you're ready for that vacation, and really consider all the people in your party, whether or not it's the right decision for everybody and for the dog as well, because those are the big considerations. We'll put this all online for you to take a look at as well. And, please share this podcast, and also make sure you check in with us. Let us know what you agree with, what you don't agree with. If you have something that works for you that's been really cool on vacation or when you had to travel or such, let us know. That would be great. We'd appreciate hearing that and share that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think this covered a lot of ground and will hopefully be helpful for people, some considerations for folks. So
yeah.
All right.
One final thought on if you are going to travel with your pet, and even within the United States, you need to look up state to state regulations on what's required.
Good thought.
So to actually legally transport your dog across state lines, it depends state to state. Every state has different regulations, but some require a certificate of veterinary inspection. Some require a health certificate, which is a little different paperwork from a veterinarian. Some require them within 30 days, some within 10 days. Almost every state requires a rabies certificate.
Yeah.
So make sure not only are you looking at the logistical things and are you keeping your pet comfortable and are you doing all of the best practices, but consider the legality.
Yeah. That's a great point because they really can check at any time. And just because you didn't know about it or they don't check everybody else doesn't mean it doesn't apply to you.
Exactly.
Yeah. So good.
I
That's a
don't
great thought.
know, or I didn't know was not a defense.
Yeah. The IRS says that too.
Exactly.
All right. We're moving into our next segment, pet peeves. And I get the pet peeve this week. And I'm happy because there's something I need to complain about. So I was out doing some stuff yesterday and stopped in to get a cup of coffee, and there was a TV on, and I'm looking. I see a dog. It catches my eye, and it's our Fox 13 channel here in probably St. Petersburg, I guess. And it was Pet Week. Let's see. So they're in Pet Week, and they have a trainer come on. And this is the kind of stuff I do as well. So I was like, darn, I wish that would have been me. But so I've been listening to the trainer. She's got good tips. And they're just talking about how to get a dog if you have a dog, training it and stuff. So, of course, at the end, she has to go on and say, make sure you get a dog from your shelter. Do not go to the breeders.
Oh, geez.
And I wanted to throw my coffee at the TV. It just, and of course, the newsman comes back on and reinforces that. We have a choice. And she actually said, don't pay all that money to get a dog from a breeder. It's up to me or you or whomever what we want to pay, right?
Exactly.
We live in a democracy, and it's supply and demand. It's capitalistic society. If I feel like I want to pay a ridiculous amount of money for something, or I want to pay very little, I have those choices.
Yeah.
It's, again, and the shelters are full. The shelters I've been to are full of bully crosses and bully breeds. They're not for everybody. It is irresponsible to make that blanket statement. And I will stand by that. I will take that with me wherever I go. But if you want a dog from a breeder, seek out breeders, talk to them, use your best judgment, do your homework, and you'll get a lot more information. You'll probably get to see the parents. There'll be vet records on hips, the dysplasia, any, things that are going to be important. That's what you're paying for. You're paying for the puppy, and you're paying for their years and years of knowledge, and the fact that they will take that puppy back. You'd have to negotiate on whether you get money back or that type of thing. But the point is, they will stand by their puppies. And and sometimes it's the right decision. If you have children or a family or you're an older person, sometimes you just don't want to take a dog that you know nothing about, and you want a certain breed or that. So please stop doing that. Please. I just don't understand why people continue to do that. Do not vilify breeders. Breeders are good people. It's just ridiculous.
It's that vocal minority thing. It's that coming from the extreme.
But we're buying into it. You know?
The thought that every dog breeder is a bad person or is just in it, trying to make as much money as they can and cutting all the corners and doing things on the cheap and abusing the animals. That's not reality.
No.
There are a lot of really good dog breeders out there that do a really good job.
There sure are. And
it's okay to purchase one of their dogs.
Stop guilting people into this, go to the shelter thing. It's truly not for everybody. And I say that as a veteran animal trainer, and I'll stand by that. And it's a dilemma what we do with the dogs that are there that really aren't adoptable and years ago wouldn't have been considered for adoption because we don't have enough dogs in shelters, adoptable dogs, which is a whole nother story. That's also another podcast that we've done. But there are opportunities to take a look at what's at the shelter and then a breeder or maybe somebody who's got a dog who can't keep them, something like that. But don't get guilted into getting the wrong dog. It's a big, huge commitment. It's a long commitment, and safety is very important. So, and cost, all of that. So make your decision. So that's my pet peeve.
Yeah. And you get to have a decision. So
yeah, we have a choice.
Use it.
Go to the pet store if you want to, and you like what you see, So if you have a concern, tell somebody in the legislative level. That's fine. Or, let the police know if you think there's abuse going on. But the reality is most of those are fine. They're taking the lowest common denominator and saying this is what they're all like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. All right. So I get to take on the trainer tip this week.
Yeah.
So my trainer tip, I kind of hinted at this the other day when I was talking about the skunk situation with Jimmy Dean.
Yeah.
But something called mark training. Training your animal to get on a mark and stay on a mark.
Excellent.
It's something that is used in the entertainment world a lot.
Commercials.
Any dog or any animal that's ever been on a commercial or in a TV show or in a movie, they are taught to get on a mark.
Yeah.
That's a big part of it. It's used in live entertainment. We use it all the time for that kind of stuff. But it's something that can become very useful just in your day to day. So it's something that I've taught Jimmy Dean. He has a lot of different marks that he can go to in my house. So I have chairs that he gets on, and he knows the difference between different chairs. So I can point at any of the 3 chairs that I have in my living room, or he knows to go to the couch, or the kennel is a mark.
Sure.
So the kennel can be in a different room or across the room, and I can say kennel and he will run to it.
Yep.
I can tell him to get on the bed. And then I have a spot outside in my backyard that I have it's the welcome mat on the back door.
Yeah.
Just a little, piece of carpet basically, that I can tell him to go to that, and he will go and sit and stay and wait for the next instruction. So it's a fun thing to do for them because it gets them active and it gets them excited and it gets them, doing something for you, giving them a job. Okay. So I use it to wear him out mentally. If I haven't been able to be home all day, I can, send him to the different marks and play and make him run back and forth and get him worn out, or I can use it for safety.
Yeah.
If I've got somebody that comes to the front door, I can say, go get on your chair, sit and stay. And he will wait until I tell him it's time to come off his mark, and he can come off. And then I don't risk him bolting out the front door or getting super excited about the person walking into the door, because he's on his mark.
Yeah. Yeah,
So-
it's great. We, I grew up, we did mark training, but we didn't call it that. We had an animal go to their seat or go to their place, here or there. And so now as I've studied training programs, and when I go to clients' homes, when I'm working with just people trying to get their dogs to behave, not even do tricks, I always tell them to use a mark by the front door or somewhere where they could send the dog when somebody, go to a carpet square works fine. Sometimes it can be their bed. Not always the bed is my first choice, but carpet squares, anything like that, the little cots, whatever. But to go sit over there during dinner. It's a great option, so they're not surfing the table and in your way. So, and we can talk maybe on another one about how you actually train it. I don't do target training, but it's very similar to that. It's timing at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But and you used it with Jimmy Dean when he had the skunk. You were told him to go sit on his mark so that you could control the situation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it can come in handy for a lot of different things.
Absolutely.
It bleeds over into a lot of other behaviors also.
I'm working with Otis. That's one of the first things I started doing, and I used some different marks when I was away last weekend. They had some dog props at the circus, so I utilized their props, put him on his seat, come over here, do this.
Yeah.
And it worked out well. I was pleased. I was testing my training, so. Well, awesome.
Yeah, excellent.
I think this has been a great episode. A lot of good information imparted, and always appreciate your input, Tommy.
Yeah, always wonderful to talk to you, Heidi.
All right, thank you. Well, we hope you've enjoyed this episode of Doggone Good Information. As always, please subscribe, rate and review the podcast, and share it with your friends. We do our best to provide some great information that will help you with your dog training journey and also other folks. So join us next time for Doggone Good Information.